What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celios Network. Today I'm doing an updated tier list for the Lost Origin standard format of the Pokemon trading card game. I'll be using this pre-made one on tiermaker.com because it has just about all of the top 20 plus popular decks according to Play Limitless TCG. So yeah, this will be for going into the SLC weekend. The weekend of the Salt Lake City Regional Championships is coming up. So yeah, we'll be doing this tier list today. But before we get into it, shout out to all my sponsors. Be sure to use potownstore.com when you're shopping for PTCGO codes, cardtroopergames.com when you're looking for new products to pre-order, PokemonCard.io for viewing, sharing, and creating deck lists, Beast Coast Pokemon, a collaborative YouTube channel of Pokemon creators, and also Dragon Shield sleeves. You can find coupon codes, affiliate links, things like that down below. Be sure to join my Discord for a great community and subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. Now, before we make the tier list, this is the tier descriptions that I use for pretty much everything. This is also what I used for the recent community tier list. But there's 5 tiers here. There's 5 tiers here. Regardless of what the tiers are named, they still mean the same thing to me, just depending on their order. So the top tier is going to be what the meta centralizes around, expected to win major events, etc. Potentially the BDIF. Tier 1, good matchup spread, doesn't take very unfavored matchups. It's expected to show up in top 16 of the majors, and it has previous success. Tier 2 is a step below Tier 1 due to having one of the following issues: less powerful, consistency issues, poor matchup spread, lack of speed, countered by typical meta cards, unrefined list, overly meta dependent, otherwise considered a meta deck. These could trickle into top 16. They're not expected to win the event or take up many spots of top 8. Tier 3, typically lower overall potential and or does not function consistently. And then Tier 4, it's an archetype that has a stereotyped list identifiable by its name, but you would bet money these decks do not show up in top 128. So now let's make our tier list. We'll start with some of the decks that are at the beginning of the list. So keeping this tier list in mind, um, Arceus Aggron is like pretty fine. I think I might put it in C tier, or it's somewhere between C and B tier for me. Just rereading this again. Um I think tier 2 fits it. So yeah, we'll put it in tier B. Arceus Duraludon, definitely a tier B deck for me. I could definitely see it uh getting a top 16 slot, maybe one top 8 if the metagame calls for it, but that's kind of where I see it. It could be a very good meta call depending on where we are the day of SLC with the meta development, but that's about it. Um, Arc Gudra, I think, is better than both of these, but I also wouldn't put it in the tier above. So maybe these will get bumped down for that reason. Essentially, all these Arceus decks I have very similar opinions on. AI is also going to go in tier B. AI has a great Lost Box matchup. It has a great Arc Duraludon matchup. It has a favored Kyurem matchup. It's pretty good. Next is going to be Arceus, Flying Pikachu, Giratina, and again, these are all going to go in here. Might even need to make a separate tier list because I do think some of these are better than the other. A separate tier, I mean, because I do think some of these are better than the others. But all these Arceus decks are pretty much exactly what I think of when I think of tier 2. They might have an issue, but they're considered a meta deck. They exist. If they get top 16, it's not a huge surprise. But you also wouldn't be surprised if they are completely missing in top 8. Arceus Radiant Zard, I'm going to put down to tier C. I don't really think it has shown any sort of success or any sort of reason why it would be better than the other Arceus variants. Um, let's see, Blissey, definitely a tier B deck. It's better in the metagame right now at this point in time while recording this video, just because it's not being countered. But yeah, I think Blissey is a tier B deck. Eternatus, Samurott, Hisuian, Sneasler. This is kind of an oddball on the list. This list has a couple of oddballs, but I guess I would put it in tier C. Like, it has some reasons to play it, right? Like, if you're playing Galarian Weezing in here, then well, here's also Galarian Weezing. Like, Galarian Weezing can do some damage on itself, but a lot of times players are going to be able to get around it. It's not completely worthless to play. I wouldn't put it in D tier. Vikavolt. Vikavolt's probably going to go in C. It really hurts the Lost Box decks, but I feel like a lot of decks can just get through it, and because Vikavolt doesn't do enough damage is the issue. Let's see. Next is Hisuian Zoroark. We're going to put that in B. I think it's, like I said, those B tier decks are things that you're not surprised. Excuse me. You're not surprised if they make it into top 16, top 32, etc., but you don't necessarily expect them to be in top 8. Cramorant Articuno going to go down into C tier, just because it's underpowered compared to the other Lost Box decks. We're going to put Dialga into C as well. And then I'm also going to put Hisuian Guja with Comfey probably into... That's a hard one. It is better versus Miltank because you have Greninja as an attacker and you have Cramorant as an attacker. But I think overall, the deck isn't as smooth as the Arc variant. Yeah, we'll put it in C. My C tier is not ordered right now, by the way. I think these decks are all kind of even-ish. Maybe this goes up here. We'll toss it up there. Now we have Greninja Lost Zone boxes. We're going to put Greninja Lost Zone boxes in A. I know they're not really showing up much, but I think they are they have very high potential, and I think these will be showing up for SLC. Giratina as well, going to go into that A tier. We might be moving things down a little bit here. I think we might be going something like, we'll move the Weezing lists down to D tier just because we need more separation. We'll move this down. We'll move this down here. And then maybe also bring Arceus Aggron down a notch. And remember, D tier doesn't mean the deck is, like, unfunctioning, right? I'm just separating these decks a little bit more to show that I think these C tier decks are a notch above these D tier decks, and the B tier decks are a notch above the C tier decks, and so on and so forth. And then Lost Zone Box is certainly A tier. Mew is certainly A. Yeah, Mew is very, very strong. So is Giratina, but it's hard to pilot. Radiant Greninja, I think, Radiant Greninja can surprise people in the Lost Zone boxes because people are very, very comfortable playing against Tord's version now with Radiant Zard. So I think the Radiant Greninja versions have a high chance of popping off this week if people were able to really refine them. We're going to put Palkia and Teleon in S tier. I think Palkia and Teleon's the best deck in format. My mouse battery is low. Thank you. Um, Palkia Kyurem. Um, oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one, don't you know? I kind of want to put it in A, but I also don't think it's as good as these 4 decks. But I think it's better than all of these decks. And that's when we add a row below. This is going to upset people. This is tier 8.5. Okay, I'm not ranking these decks. I don't know what the heck Bibarel Greedent is. Reggie Gigas is very strong. We'll put this in here. The Urshifu decks we'll put in tier 3, sure. These decks, that's tier whatever. That can go there. This does not exist. Okay, so now let's look at this and see, like, with some reevaluation if I still think all of this is how it goes. So, Palkia, best deck in format. It's diverse. You could pretty much do anything with your turns at this point. You can play so many different cards in the deck. Custom Catcher, Cologne, Marnie and Roxanne, Raihan, Capture Energy, Quick Shooting, Inteleon, Zigzagoon, a Big Charm, Choice Belt, Leon. There's so much potential for this deck and so many ways to build it and so many things you can do with your turns. I think the deck is just very, very, very powerful and has an out to almost any kind of deck. Um, but with that being said, everybody is going to be practiced against Palkia and Teleon. At least that's my opinion. I think everyone will have a plan. That doesn't mean they're going to beat Palkia and Teleon, but they'll at least have an idea of how to beat it. And then in A tier, moving down, I think that towards version of Lost Zone Box, the Sablezard variant, and towards list is very good. I think that changing towards lists by like 2 to 6 cards is going to be the way to play Sablezard this week. But I also think Radiant Greninja variants have the potential to be very, very good. And then Giratina, I think Giratina is still unrefined. We have not seen the best Giratina list yet. We saw some great ideas out of John and Justin's last week in Peoria, and we also saw some great ideas out of Michael Pramawat's, but I don't think we saw the perfect list from either of them, because I think those top tier players, if they had the perfect Giratina list, I think they would be able to beat everything. So maybe Giratina's potential is lower than I think. Maybe those players had bad luck, and I could be wrong on that regard. It seems like the Lost Zone box, especially Tord's version when Tord was piloting it very, very well, was pretty hard for them to overcome. Mew VMAX is just generally strong. Mew VMAX is good. Ian Rob's list is exactly what I would have played in Peoria. He got 24th if you want to check and get that list. I still think that list is very good. If I were to play Mew, I'd probably still be playing that list. And then in our prestigious A.5 tier, we have Palkia Kyurem and Reggie Gigas. These decks are going to be down here a little bit lower because they give you a little less control over your games and what you can do, and they yeah, they're a little less consistent than the other decks, I think. A little less reliable at doing what they need to do, but their power level is very, very strong. Their matchup spreads are pretty good. And I think people might underrate Regigigas because gift energy is bugged on PTCGO, or at least it has been. I don't know if it's fixed yet, but it's been showing up less in online events because it can't use gift energy, and gift energy is a pretty important card for the deck in this format. Down in B tier, we've got Blissey Miltank. Blissey Miltank is good because players aren't teching for the Miltank, so that might get a lot of decks. And also, Blissey is hard to knock out, especially with these decks doing little bits of chip damage, like the Lost Box decks. And also, Palkia and Teleon's damage output is pretty low against Blissey when you just have like one active Pokemon and one benched Pokemon, and you hit them with the Averys. They're not going to be doing that much damage to you. So Blissey Miltank is good because of the Miltank, but also just good overall because of its healing and tanking and low bench strategies. Arceus Gudra is great because it has a favored matchup into Palkia and Teleon and a favored matchup into the Lost Box variants, and that's good enough because I think Lost Box variants are second to Palkia and Teleon. So essentially, it has good matchups against the two best decks in format, plus some other stuff. Arceus Flying Pika Giratina. I think Arceus Bibarel Marnie Path is just super strong, and I can't really discount that. Flying Pikachu can be good against unsuspecting players and decks, and Giratina V Star hits like a truck. So this deck really just can't be bad, and I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody take it to a top 16 finish. AI, pretty much same thing, except I think it'll be played much less because not as many people huff the AI Hopium like I do. But AI has an incredible Lost Box matchup. It has an even Mew and Cure. It has an even Mew matchup. It's favored versus Kyurem. If you want to beat Reggie, you can with your techs. I think still it has an even Palkia and Teleon matchup when the AI player is actually as good as the Palkia and Teleon player, which I think has been a problem in the biases that come up about this matchup. Um, but yeah, really great Lost Box matchup, essentially 50-50 across the rest of the board. You scoop if you see Blissey Mill tank, essentially, but other than that, most things are winnable for the deck. Arceus Duraludon, really great with things like Blissey Milk getting hype, and Regigigas having an incredible day back in Peoria last week. It's also not bad against Palkia and Lost Boxes, so hey, this is looking pretty good in the same way that Goodra is, except it beats Blissey Miltank pretty handedly. And then Hisuian Zorark. It's just a, powerhouse beat stick deck. It did well in Peoria, so people are going to play it. I don't think its success will emulate its success in Peoria. Down in Tier C, people have been talking about Arceus and Teleon Radiant Zard since Radiant Zard came out, and I still have not seen anyone do anything with this archetype. Vikavolt Zapdos, it's great against Lost Box. It can be very good versus Palkia and Teleon as well, but then it starts to suck against just about everything else that can set up a board and not care about you doing 70 damage a turn to them. Dialga V-Star Lost Box, it's great. It doesn't always hold up against the single prize stuff, though, and there is a lot of single prize stuff happening. Hisuian Goodra with Comfy Engine. I'm not going to lie, I have less experience with this one than the Arc variant, but I've also been seeing it succeed less, so my overall opinion is that it will have less success than the Arc Goodra variant. Arc Aggron, I think, is on its way out in favor of Arc Giratina. The Urshifu variants, I'm sure diehard Urshi fans can make a case for why this is the perfect format for Urshifu. I'm just not interested. Same for the Urshifu version of Rapid Strike and Teleon VMAX. And then the D tier decks, I would probably just suggest not playing them to this event because there are like 15 decks that are better than them objectively. So yeah, that's my tier list for Lost Origin right now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.